We have Chloe Wood with us here today of Two Green Shoots down in West Cork. Welcome, Chloe.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to see you this morning. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a rainy morning here, at least in Dublin. So I hope the weather is okay down in West Cork.
It's the perfect interview day, quite frankly, Sean. It is absolutely, we've got horizontal rain coming down here, hammering on the window. You might be able to just about hear it in the background. We picked a really good one for, having a mug of tea and having the chats inside.
So yeah, I mean, let's start from the beginning, and I'd love to know, when you started Green Shoots, how far back was that, and really what was your, I suppose, inspiration for starting it? Because it's such an interesting business.
Yeah, so it's 2017 that we first got going, and it was the latter part of that year, sort of September time. And it was a real whirlwind of a year. So both the other green shoot, Adam and I had been working for large scale charities, Adam for the National Trust and myself for a community charity, and increasingly getting frustrated about not being able to put ideas that we had into practice. And my mum seeded this idea of coming back to Ireland and to West Cork, where I'd grown up, and starting a project here. They have a site, they run an open air museum of a sculpture garden, and had a piece of land alongside that they were threatening to sell, and they said, look, it's now or never. Either you come back and do something. And I'd had a really it was a really miserable time in Ireland as a teen, living in the sticks and no access to a car. It's a pretty isolating experience. So I had no intention of coming back. But fast forward those 6 months, one thing led to another, and we found ourselves on a ferry coming over the Irish Sea and landing in Rosslare. And that was on the Monday. And by the Friday, we were running our first event, series of events as part of the West Cork Food Festival. And
Wow.
so we were just straight into it. And we, quite frankly, we haven't stopped since. It's been a real adventure, and very much adding sort of branches to the business as we've gone on. So that first season, it was very much events based, and then we spent that winter uncovering a lost garden from the 1940s that my parents didn't even know about. It had been smothered by invasive plants. And so we opened up a garden that following year, and which is an edible garden,
Okay.
celebrating incredible flavors that can be grown in Ireland, and really kind of pushing the boundaries of what's possible for our green spaces. And then we also added some botanical themed accommodation. So it really, we never wrote a business plan, and indeed, still haven't. It's been really, it sounds very cliche, but really we have just gone with the flow, and kind of grown and developed different branches as the opportunities have kind of arisen, very much based on the site and the space that we're growing at, or that we're running on, and things have just, yeah, as I said, organically grown.
Wow. Wow. And so, I mean, did both of you have a gardening background before you started the business, or has that kind of also grown organically?
No, so both of us. So really, the kind of course, the site has dictated what we've done here, but the kind of food and fuel behind that has come off the back of our backgrounds. So Adam is a horticulturalist, and his background would be in managing big historic estates for the National Trust, and that continues to be a passion of his. He works off site managing the gardens at Bantry House half of the
Okay.
week. And so he's not phased by scale. So the site in its entirety is 280 acres. So it's a big lump of rock that runs up to the Cork Kerry border. And over time, we're starting to kind of scale up what we're doing within this space. And I'll tell you a little bit more about some new exciting projects that we have on the go for this year. But my background was in academia. I studied zoology, conservation, moved into sustainable development, and then found myself doing a PhD in the environment and human health, and very topical, but had burnt out in my reading and writing, and at that point had met Adam and got my hands stuck into some soil and discovered the thrill of actually getting out of my head and out of an office and actually into the outdoors. And I then did permaculture design. So really
Okay.
holistic way of working with people and place. Garden design branch of our business was born out of, was then sharing that. So yes, it's very much been a kind of a journey, and one that still continues to have sort of twists and turns.
Amazing. And so obviously, so you've been in business probably the guts of 7 years now. So I always like to ask our guests, well, what are some of the challenges you face in the business? And I suppose how have you met them and overcome them? And if there's any kind of any things that you think that other business owners are probably going through similarly that you can give tips for.
Yeah, I was reflecting on this, and there's two big kind of learnings for us. One is literally in the last year, and that has been that um just because you're partners doesn't necessarily mean that long term you're great business partners. So Adam and I in the last sort of 12 months have realized we've sort of been moving more and more in the direction of our own projects within the business, and actually that there's been real thrill to sort of have, we've working and living, and we're business partners and
Life partners.
life partners, exactly. And that actually, it was really doing our head in, working, rubbing shoulders with each other day in, day out. And actually, it's, we're a lot happier, running complementary services and projects, but having our own sort of projects to really get our teeth into. And it's kind of, again, it's sort of happened quite organically, but in the last 12 months we've really made a decision to really kind of drive on with that a lot more. So I'm now running the design branch of the business, just myself. And Adam has moved much more into kind of offsite consultancy work. And then the piece that we're still kind of collaborating on will be our experiences.
Okay.
But Adam does the growing of the plants, brings them up to as far as the kitchen, and then I take them all those flavors on at that point and turn them into feasts for sharing with people. So it's and there's been a mourning in that, because it's felt, and this, I think for any of your listeners who are you know a micro business, often this is a similar story. Your life partners that are really passionate about whatever it might be and want to leap into this journey together, but actually that doesn't necessarily mean that you can work practically together, and that's okay. And there was a real mourning process for us. We felt like a failure as a couple, that we could, we were really struggling with that, and it was grating on us. But it's been such a relief, now just giving ourselves permission to actually, sit with that and be okay with that, and now get on with these new ventures. The second piece, and that sort of leads on to that, as far as challenges, has been staying small. So there's been so many times in the last 7 years that this business has really wanted to sort of run away. So there's a huge opportunity in Ireland in horticulture to develop everything from plant production. You know, there's a huge gap in the market for organically grown, unusual edibles. We're importing so much of our plant material still into
Okay.
this country, and that brings in pests and diseases. So we were looking at setting up a nursery at one point, but again, we'd have to dedicate ourselves just solely to that. There's, you know, I won't go into all of it, but basically there's been so many things that have sort of wanted to put, and we would be looking at developing big teams to basically manage those different operations. And my parents have been a real kind of guide in this. So they're on the same site as us, running business called the U Experience, and they've stayed. I mean, credit to them. They've been working as life partners and business partners for 30 years.
Wow.
And their big adage has always been, look, stay small. You're so resilient. We've seen, you know, with COVID, and then, you know, more recently with the cost of living crisis and spiraling energy costs and you know, staffing costs, it's putting huge pressure on businesses. And for us, you know, we've really realized staying small, obviously it limits, you know, the kind of the scope and the service offerings you're able to deliver, but it does give you real, when these shocks, these, you know, and we're going to be seeing more of them in an ever-changing world, you know, with extreme weather events that are outside of our control. Being, you know, a micro team means you're able to pivot and change really quickly, and you don't have huge overhead costs to have to, you know, keep on bringing a reliable income stream through. Um, and I've raged against it, and I'm like, you know, this is a missed opportunity, we should do this and that. But actually, you know, we've kept coming back to actually just pulling in and just keeping it as something that, you know, we can manage ourselves, and we've got control and freedom over what that looks and smells and tastes and you know, it feels like for our clients by doing that as well. So now every business will be different, but certainly for us, we've just found that that's it's at the very heart of it, just really reduces stress and burden, and means that you can still live a life within your business rather than working to you know, keep other people, you know, pedaling and in work as well. So
I think it's a great point. And I probably something that maybe is counterintuitive, but I think definitely as we continue the conversation and see the very diverse arms of your business, I think that all fits into place, at least in my mind. I think it's very complementary to that. And maybe before we jump into those specific arms, I always again like to ask, if you were starting the business over again tomorrow, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently, if anything?
mhm.
Has the journey really been how it's meant to have gone, or are there things that you would have said, okay, well maybe I wouldn't have done that, or I would have changed the way I approach this? What kind of, in hindsight, because it's always 2020, what has that given you, if anything, to kind of, I suppose, change your approach if you were to do it all over again?
um and it's now going to go against exactly what I've just said, which is staying really small, but is opening our project up to for people to get involved, so far as you know, students, volunteers. We've It was in 2022, so not last autumn, the autumn before, we welcomed our first team of woofers, um, and it was one of the most life affirming, thrilling months. because having said, we're just a team of two, and we're doing everything ourselves, from the sowing, the growing of the botanicals that we serve, right through to, the experiences that people can come on to actually enjoy these flavors. There is a real thrill in numbers, and so we now run 2 months a year, so November and March, or kind of April time, we open the doors to our bed and breakfast, and we have a group of, and it tends to be a blend of sort of like landscaping students, and woofers. And for anybody who doesn't know, woofers, it's workers on organic farms. It's an international scheme, and so they'd be coming in helping us with plant propagation, all the food production side of things, as well as a big thing we've been tackling the last few years is dealing with invasive species on this site. And I can't tell you, Sean, what a thrill it's been, to actually have, this energy, and this these dream teams come in and actually really start to, I was saying earlier, we're starting to scale up what we're doing, moving just beyond our kind of 1.5 acre garden to really start planting crops at scale, to dealing with invasive species at scale, and restore habitats on the site. And the only way we can do that, is by opening our door. But it's been such a rewarding experience, and we resisted it for years. People were like, do you know what, you should link in with Erasmus, with woofing networks, and bring. And I said, do you know what, I just don't. I think we're going to be spending all of our time managing volunteers and not good. But if you get a really good group and a motivated team, it's such a pleasure. So yeah, that's one thing I would say. If there are opportunities for you as a business owner to open up your business to those, for those learning opportunities, because it's a real two-way process. We're sharing propagation skills, all sorts of hints and tips and tricks, but we're also learning a lot from the people who come here that have traveled the world and been involved in plant production in all sorts of different climates. So that certainly, yeah, that would be my advice, is if you have got opportunities within your biz, even for short, like we couldn't do it year round because it's a real investment of your time and energy, but even if it's just a week here or there, it's one of the most rewarding things you can do.
Super. And so I think that leads perfectly into, let's dive into kind of the different arms of your business. So you've talked about the experiences you do. Obviously, uh, you're bringing in edible plants. It's amazing from what I've seen on the website, but I'd love, I suppose, for those who haven't seen your website yet, to get kind of a description of what you guys do, at least in your experiences, and then we can talk about the garden design, and then you also do accommodation. So it's fascinating. So please, kind of give us the rundown on the experiences to start with.
Yeah, so we our tagline is we create gardens, feasts, and escapes that nourish people and the planet. And that's the kind of common thread that runs through. So on the experience side of things, they're all based on getting people tasting, smelling, touching the huge variety of edible botanicals that we grow on site. And so that garden that we uncovered from the 1940s, we basically filled all of those beds and borders with a multi-layered food forest. So you're growing edibles right from the ground right up to the treetops. And it means, instead of just having, a field of turnips growing, which is very much a kind of 2D crop, you're actually able to gather crops and flavors right through your different layers and really maximize the space that you have. So it's just 1.5 acres, the garden, as it has been. but we're growing everything from mulberries to giant celery, to a crop Adam's particularly excited about this year is it's called Siberian pea tree. And it's actually a fodder crop. So we're increasingly blending livestock into what we're doing as we sort of scale up, and using those livestock in kind of conservation grazing capacity. But we want to supplement their feed with botanicals that we're growing on site. So the Siberian pea tree is a really good example of that, because we end up with like tree hay. So it's basically the leaves that you gather and then you can feed the livestock, but produces a pea pod, which is really, really delicious. It's like the sweetest pea you could imagine. So those will be shelled and then, woven into feasts. And they're also nitrogen fixer. So we intercrop them. So we plant them in amongst other crops, and they actually basically feed the plants around them for free. So the experiences that we offer, we run 4 different edible adventures in the gardens themselves, from breakfast, lunch, afternoon tea, to then last autumn, or last spring I should say, we opened up a foraging trail. And that was part of this move to really connect people with the incredible wild edible plants that are growing right on our doorsteps. So these aren't plants that have come in from all around the world, because as fun as that is, we actually often overlook what's right in front of our noses. So the foraging trail, it tracks up through a 3-acre piece of woodland, and up into a piece of temperate rainforest on the side of the mountain, and gives people a chance to taste everything from lemon flavored shamrock to heart-shaped little dog violet lettuce leaves. And all of our experiences are really interactive. So as well as learning about the botanicals, people actually get a chance to be part of creating a feast from them. And the foraging experience is a really good example. So people actually will gather in a camp woodland kitchen and actually make a lunch out of those botanicals that they've just gathered. So it's great fun. It's a really multi-sensory experience. And going back to what I was talking about, that two-way learning, what's been really lovely actually about the kind of the foraging and the wild foods tours is people have stories from when they were kids of picking that, tasting this, passed down from their grandparents. And there's been some really, as we gather around the campfire, there's this gorgeous sort of sharing of stories and folklore, and it's been great. So whether you want to learn about the wild and the wacky plants that might never have heard about, let alone tasted, right through to reconnecting with the plants that you might have forgotten from your childhood, or the ones that you never got to discover. We offer a full kind of package.
Very cool. Very cool. And so tell us then a little bit about the garden design side of it. And again, from your website, people can see that you offer some virtual consultations and virtual packages. And I think that's very interesting for a lot of small business owners to be able to expand that reach if they have offerings that work with that. So I think that would be amazing to hear how that experience has been, and any tips and tricks in that area of the business.
Yeah, and that was, for us, that was something that came out of COVID. So we weren't able to, travel to sites. And we were really, we were lucky enough to get some grant funding through the local enterprise office to really develop our website, and to build in, and expand on that online offering. So a huge thanks to them for that, because we'd never have even considered it up until that point. But it's been a real game changer for us. It means that we're able to connect with people in their gardens wherever they are. So that we tend to work across the UK and Ireland. just climatically. You know, we've got the most experience of this this neck of the woods. But you know, everything from little inner city gardens up in Dublin. And interestingly, we seem to be heading more and more in that direction. People wanting who are in you know, quite urban environments, but are craving that nature and are craving a space that, you know, every square inch of their surroundings is tarmacked, you know, concreted, paved over, trees, you know, trained in cordons, and you know, it's all very sterile. The life's pushed right out of these urban environments often, and they're craving to take some action in a space that they have got some control over, and that's often their gardens. And it could be, you know, teeny tiny little space, but they've been some of the most rewarding projects I think that we've worked on, is actually really bringing life into those environments. And clients find it just such a thrill how quickly the life does come in as soon as you allow it to. So you know, and do you know what's been really interesting is that's now the kind of virtual design, and those virtual packages have far surpassed our other offerings. And you know, I was talking about changes that we're making to the business, that those packages are actually something that we're really wanting to expand on and to focus on moving forward. Because the reality is that you know, there's huge time, resources, you know, in fuel, actually getting to sites and backwards forward, and actually so much can just be done virtually these days. And in the midst of a cost of living crisis, by you know, eliminating all of those travel costs, we can actually create a package that's much more affordable for people, which means we're able to deliver more of these projects and bring the life back to more green spaces. So those are the kind of the two that we're really wanting. We're going to be probably developing another 1 or 2 virtual packages, and yeah, we want to sort of dive into that side of things a lot more heading into the future.
The virtual packages that you offer, I think it's something that a lot of business owners in a lot of different niches, in a lot of different industries, absolutely, I think, can learn from that. But you not only do that, but you also have accommodation, which I think is, again, fascinating, a great, you know, a very diverse other arm of the business on top of the other two. So please tell us about how the kind of the accommodation side of the business has gone, and again, if there's any tips and tricks there that you've learned that you can share with other people.
Absolutely. You know, I suppose the inspiration for it was we started with the events and the experiences, and people were coming here, and it would be for, you know, an afternoon, or at most, you know, a day course or workshop, and wish they could stay longer. And that sowed a seed. We were like, you know what, we've got you know, a range of rooms that are totally underutilized, and you know, space on the land that would just be magical, you know, to enable people to spend a little bit more time. So again, working with what we had, we opened up the botanical B&B in 2018, and then also added the botanical bell tent for kind of private couple escapes for couples, really. So we have that unit for 2, and then the COVID came along not long after, and we moved the bed and breakfast to just doing private groups. So it tends to be families or groups of friends that are traveling and want a space just to themselves. And it's been wonderful, actually. you know, I've worked a lot in hospitality over the years, you know, as indeed many people have, working in the local pub, or I worked in both, also the local hotel, and so had that experience and that love of creating um nurturing spaces for people to spend a bit of time in, you know, that spaces that people can kind of just breathe and relax. And you know, having more than a couple of hours, I a couple we have minimum of sort of now 3 night stays, really gives people a chance to actually properly unpack the bags, make themselves at home, and get to know the space and make it theirs, you know, start to head out into the woods. We've opened the foraging trail to our guests so they can go up into the rainforest and sit, spend a bit of time. Um, and it's been wonderful. So it's something that's another branch that we're currently in the sort of midst of rethinking. We want to do a lot more of it, but what kind of shape that takes, we're still sort of thrashing out all of the boring bits at the moment, Sean. Quite frankly, our challenge is Esk, which is the mountain that our site is on, means cliff face in Ireland. And
Okay.
cliff faces aren't very conducive to cars driving up. So it's really boring, but our biggest challenge at the moment is we'd love to enable people. There's some absolutely spectacular spaces. There's lakes, there's rivers, there's waterfalls on this site, and I'd love to be, you know, building really, really stunning, you know, handcrafted units using timber from the site, that enables people to spend time in these beautiful spots. But it's just how on earth do we get people up there? So there's lot of head scratching at the moment, and so watch this space. It's something that we're really pedaling away at and figuring out how we can make happen. But I highly recommend, and I suppose, you know, it might seem strange having these different branches to the business, but for us, it does a number of things. It makes us more resilient. We've got income streams coming from different areas, you know. For instance, during lockdown, obviously people couldn't travel down, or at least the initial lockdown, people couldn't travel down, so the accommodation was closed. But we were able to do our virtual design work, so we were still pedaling away. Um, and so whatever kind of, you know, shocks that come our way, there's usually a branch that we can kind of, you know, carry on with. The other thing is it's a lot more fun. You know, again, just thinking about yourselves as this is going to be something you're doing day in, day out. And for us, we need variety. I could not be doing design work 12 months of the year. You know, I'd fall out of love with it. I love kind of coming back to it refreshed, you know, with you know, new eyes come the autumn time. And then we do that through the winter months. And when you want to be kind of, you know, more in the office, there's less to be doing in the gardens. Um, and then we open up our experiences and our accommodation during those kind of peak summer months. So it just means, like, by the time, you know, summer comes around, I'm again well ready to rid myself of the computer and be back out, you know, in the kitchen, making, creating, hosting people, sharing the space. But then, yeah, it flips round again, you know, that sort of cycle come the autumn time, really ready to sort of hibernate a little bit more and reduce down. Um,
Absolutely. Variety is the spice of life.
it totally is, you know. So I'd say if you can, you know, build that in to your business as much as is possible, you know, to give you to keep yourself challenged as well. And it means, you know, the other, I suppose the third part of it is that those branches are quite complementary. So a lot of people that would come and spend time here and in the gardens, they go on to become design clients. You know, they want us to help them, you know, reimagine their own space at home. And likewise for those that come on the experiences, again, it gives them a little flavour of what we offer, and they might come back and stay a little bit longer the next summer. So they do, you know, they work really nicely alongside each other.
You were speaking at the start, just before we started recording, about the big plans for the coming year. And I'd love to, maybe, if you want to share that with our audience, I think it would be very interesting, because that obviously also is a big part of any business, is that, future planning and figuring out. I think a lot of people, they worry about that. They think, okay, maybe I'm doing okay now, or I could be doing better, in whatever sense of the word that is. But they worry that, okay, well, maybe if I make this decision, I'm going to make the wrong decision, or maybe I should be doubling down on something that it's not my favorite part of the business, or whatever it may be. And I think it's great to get your insights, how you're growing and how you're thinking about growing. I think is a really interesting topic. So again, if you have any thought processes that you think are important and have been important for you and the business, I think it would be great to hear that.
Yeah, my first bit of advice is just don't do it if you don't love it, because you're going to drive yourself mad, and it'll come across, for the people who are engaging with that service or that product or whatever it might be. Now, there's of course really dull bits of any business, like making sure, things are clean and facilities are, up and running and functional. But wherever possible, bring, other, like for instance, I valiantly attempted taking on all of the bookkeeping account side of things when we first started. And it was the best thing I've ever done, is to completely hand all of that over to somebody who loves it. They get a real kick out of making or creating order out of the mess that I hand over to them. I mean, credit to my accountant. Patience of a saint. So lean into the stuff that you love. You will never go wrong if that's your guiding principle. And it's what, we're, like I said, realize Adam and I just cannot work, with each other in a way that brings us real joy. So we learnt right away from that. And the other thing, so far as kind of plans going forward, and what we are leaning into is scaling up of our operations on this site. So I said, it's been between the foraging trail and the gardens, kind of 5-6 acres that we've been kind of, running our operations on, over 280-acre site. So there's real opportunity there to create ways of people enjoying and connecting with that. And a few years ago, we started building a relationship with an outdoor adventure company, and they run bushcraft courses on the site, and mountaineering, outdoor like survival skills. And that's something that there's been huge uptake in, and we want to sort of build on and do more of. We're going to be expanding our trail. So the foraging trail that currently just does a little bit of a loop, we're currently looking to run that up along a river and a series of waterfalls, and connect into a number of camps higher up on the mountain, both for foraging but also for mindfulness and experiences. And to do that, we want to bring more collaborators on board. So if anyone's listening to this and are, anything from a herbalist to, a run outdoor adventures, or any kind of nature, but even like forest bathing, and are interested in a space that they can utilize and use to run a workshop or an event, please do reach out to us. That'll be, once the facilities are up and running, that'll be something that's made available. And the other thing is scaling up the production of some of the really delicious botanicals that we've been growing. So the gardens at the moment have been a real a test bed for seeing what grows really well. If it does grow really well, does it actually taste good? Um, and does it crop well? Do you know, actually get a decent harvest out of it? Are there any pests and diseases that affect it? And invasiveness. We don't want to be scaling up any botanicals that there's any risk that will run riot and run rampant, you know, across the mountain, or, you know, any other sites that it might be introduced to. So there's been a few that have ticked all those boxes, and we're now at the stage of kind of ramping up production, and we want to start scaling up kind of quantities so that we can start, you know, sharing these flavors with more people beyond, you know, our garden gates. So again, it's still early stage, and we're, you know, trying to put things in place, but that's something we're really dedicating time and capacity to this year. So yeah, really excited to be working on that. And the other thing is, on the kind of the site scale, is we want Esk Mountain to be to nurture the planet. And so we're really looking at along the lines of rewilding. So, you know, re-wetting bogs, you know, really protecting the water courses that are on this site, dealing with invasive species, using proxy herbivores to drive some really exciting ecological change on this site, to regenerate the temperate rainforest that there's a little tract of, and actually enable that to start expanding up over the mountain. We're looking at transitioning some sections of plantation forestry over to native woodland. So really that's kind of a big focus of this year, is looking broadly at the site and how we can, you know, really drive that positive ecological change, and link up with other people. There's some fantastic, you know, agri-environmental schemes that are coming down the tracks, and kind of broader scale landscape projects that we want this site to be part of, because it's still a little postage stamp, you know, in the grand scheme of things. So again, if anyone's listening to this and are running any kind of broad catchment or landscape scale projects and would like I would say to people, treat us like low-hanging fruit. You know, all you hear about is resistance in the press from landowners or farmers. And I'm like, not only are we not resistant, we're actually saying, like, we're well up for it. So, you know, treat us like an easy win. Get in touch. We'd love to chat more.
I think it's going to be an incredible year for you and Adam, and I wish you all the best. And yeah, I think let's stay tuned. Maybe we're going to have to do a follow up next year and hear about these amazing developments.
Absolutely. And do you know what? We might not be a step further, Sean, insofar as anything on the ground, but you know, we'll be pedaling away nonetheless. And I think that's something I'd say to, you know, business owners. There's so much that goes in to, you know, taking a step in any direction. And that's okay. You know, even if you've got nothing to show for it other than you've expanded your network, you've made some really interesting contacts in the twists and turns, that, you know, something will come out of the more relationships that you can have with different people, and other business owners, the better. You know, and I was saying that earlier, it's something that we really, again, are actively kind of building our network and our kind of pool of collaborators, and investing time in that, because you know, while we might not be expanding our kind of direct team, if we can, you know, build those informal links of people who can, you know, utilize this site or connect with it, all the better. But yeah, to not, you know, really not feel bad if there's nothing on the ground at the end of it. You're still, it's all good stuff.
Chloe, thank you very much for your time. And yeah,
Thank you.
we'll check in soon.